Guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
How you doing, Kevin? What's on your mind?
I'm doing pretty fine so far. Thanks for the presentation, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening.
Um, I have problems with several slides. I also have a problem with slide two, which was discussed earlier.
Okay.
Maybe to give
Not
my
to beat a
thought.
dead horse, maybe we can move to it since you have several different slides. Maybe we'll look at an objection on another
Yeah,
slide if that's all right.
yeah, maybe just one sentence, but
Okay.
I think the problem that difficult had, sorry, that difficult had is that the negation of the principle of sufficient reason wouldn't be that nothing has a reason or cause. So even if there are things that don't have a cause or reason, that wouldn't mean that we can't have empirical knowledge. And even if it doesn't mean that, then we can just admit that we don't have empirical knowledge, but we are just have some level of certainty that we have knowledge.
Oh, that's perfect. I actually, yeah, that's a new point. So that I don't think that was quite the point that Difficult was making. But what I'll say to that is, so I wasn't claiming that if it's possible that some things don't have a cause, then nothing has a cause. Like that wasn't part of the argument. It was instead saying that if for any object or event or whatever, if it could be uncaused, then we don't have the other side of the coin. So there's the possibility that it's caused, or there's the possibility that it's uncaused. If we're denying the PSR, then we're admitting some positive possibility that it's uncaused. And if that's the case, then there's just nowhere to draw the line because the blue, to go back to the pie graph, I had that blue wedge which represented it being uncaused, and then the red wedge which represented it being caused. So I'm not saying that the whole thing's blue. That's not the claim. It's saying that the blue wedge is undefined. And since the blue wedge is undefined, it follows that the red wedge would also be undefined. But yeah, so thanks for letting me clarify that. If you have any last comment on that, I don't want to harp on that slide too much because I think we should move on to other slides or your other objections to the presentation.
Okay, yeah, sure. In slide four, about um, determinism and stuff, I know this,
Slide four. So that's universe is necessary. The actual word. Yeah, you embrace modal collapse.
yes, so I know you like to bring up intuition,
Yeah. Well,
and
it's not just that, but yeah.
you said for the second premise that intuition is a good starting point there or something like that. Um, and while while I kind of agree, I don't think that intuition really makes a statement true or false. It just says what we feel about the statement. So I'm not sure if your defense of premise two is really that strong.
Sure. I came ready for you. I didn't want to put too much in the initial presentation because, again, I try to keep, for all of our events, no matter who's the presenter, we want to keep that really limited so that we can have more time for interaction. I came hoping that somebody would bring up just the objection you did. So I've got yet another slide. There's a house collapsing in the background that's meant to represent modal collapse. It's really hard to, to have slides for modality. How do you get an image to represent modality? Like it's really weird. House collapsing, that's the best you get. So I've got basically like three different arguments or objections or claims I would make in favor of theism and relate to that. So first of all, I will point out that the embracing modal collapse agrees with the argument from contingency. It agrees that there is a necessary foundation for the existence of reality. It just claims that that necessary foundation is everything. It sort of agrees that there is this necessary foundation. So it's not really an objection to the contingency argument so much as it would just be saying, well, I don't agree the personhood part of it, because I would just, instead of agreeing that, well, there must be some contingent effects, I'll just, bite the bullet and say that, well, there's necessary effects. And so we end up with one possible world. And so I've got kind of three different responses that I would give to that. So first of all, we rely on our modal intuitions all the time. And so it's not just like it's not intuition like I intuitively have these feelings. But intuition relates more to like your experience of the world. And so, Difficult, for example, brought up phenomenal conservatism. Phenomenal conservatism relies on your intuitions that I seem to be seeing sunlight, for example. That's an intuition. I seem to remember eating, yogurt this morning. That's another intuition. And so these are intuitions about the world, or seemings about the world. And I believe it's Richard Swinburne who categorizes them as, experiential intuitions or senses, memory beliefs, testimonial beliefs, and I think you had one other one that I'm forgetting. But these are various different ways that we know about the world. And so we can't just throw out intuitions and say, well, I intuitions, you don't know anything. Well, if you throw out intuitions, then your memory of what scientific experiments you read about, you have to throw out that too. So we don't want to throw out our intuitions too lightly. But what about our modal intuitions? What about those? Well, again, we rely on those all the time. We make probability judgments about the effects that our actions will have, and what causes or what effects we hope to bring about, and those sorts of things. So I don't think we want to throw that out too lightly, but I'll agree that if somebody wants to deny them, they can surely do it. You can't prove modal intuitions, certainly not empirically. So what else can we look at? Well, first of all, I want to say it's Proust again that points out that, or maybe it's Craig, I don't know, that we have two different claims about reality. We've got string theory and we've got particle theory. So particle theory, most people are familiar with it. The foundation of matter is like quarks and things, right? Up and down quarks. That's particle theory. Then there's also string theory, that it's in terms of strings, not these particles. Well, if the fundamental stuff of the universe is necessary, then let's say particle theory is true. It wouldn't just be the fact that string theory is false. It would be that it's necessarily false, that it's not even possible. It's metaphysically impossible for string theory to be true. And maybe you're willing to bite the bullet and go that far, but you'd have to be, that's a pretty strong claim that you're required to make, is that it's not just, again, I mean, if you're willing to say, I guess, that if you had 3 blueberries, you couldn't have had 4, maybe you're willing to make these strong scientific claims, but at least the scientists don't seem to want to make that strong a claim. And finally, simplicity. So when we're looking for, the explanatory virtues, the different things that make one explanation better than another, simplicity is one of those things. And so what embracing modal collapse does, saying that everything is necessary, what that does is it sort of multiplies complexity, in that we're assigning this attribute of necessary existence, not just to, one thing, but we're assigning it to a myriad of things, innumerable numbers of things, all the quarks. And so that seems to be problematic. It seems like it's an increase in simplicity to say there's one necessary thing rather than there's innumerable necessary things. And so again, if you don't buy the personhood argument, you want to embrace modal collapse, that's fine. But we can look at other arguments for personhood. It's part of a cumulative case. And so I think at least it makes the argument for a necessary foundation for the existence of reality, which is a step towards theism in the cumulative case that we're trying to put together.
Okay, yeah, right. That was a lot. My final comments for slide 4 would be, while I agree that you gave good reasons to think that premise 2 could be true, I think it's not proven. Like, good evidence and all, and I can see why anyone would lean towards premise 2 being true, but I don't think it's proven. Like you said, there's a whatever case that you make. So
Cumulative,
slide 4
yeah.
isn't necessary for all of this, but just talking about slide 4, I think premise 2 isn't a given.
Sure. So let me ask you, what do you mean by proven? When you say it's not proven, if I could just ask, like, what do you mean by that?
Yep, proven in the sense of it's true that the actual word is not necessary. Like I said, you gave good reasons to think that it's not necessary, but I don't think you have really shown that it's not necessary.
So when you say shown that it's not necessary, do you mean So let's like simplify it and say show that X. Okay. So when you prove X, are you saying prove in the sense that you prove that it couldn't be not X, it must be X? That's what it would be to prove? Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else?
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
Okay. Well, in that case, all that I would say is that, in that sense, yeah, I don't claim to prove premise two or that God exists. I don't claim to prove any of that to that high bar of I can't possibly be wrong. For anything, I believe I could be in the matrix, so I could possibly be wrong about everything. And so I certainly don't try to do that. Rather, what I'm trying to show is that somebody is justified or reasonable in affirming. This is a reasonable conclusion to draw. And so that somebody who, believes in God, for example, that's justified based on these things. Maybe it's not proven. I'm not trying to prove it. But it's a rational and justified position to take. Maybe it's not the position you take, sure, but it's a justified and rational position. So that's all I'm trying to say. And so I really appreciate that you brought that up because, yeah, I definitely don't want to come off like I'm making a stronger claim than I really am.
Okay, so maybe in the future, I know now I know what you want to express, but this, how do I say it, absolute language, like therefore the universe is not necessary. I think so. What you actually want to get at is therefore we have good reasons or evidence that the universe is not necessary, right? That's what you get at.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point. Maybe it would be worthwhile to soften language. I mean, we are getting into, so I come from
Yeah, it's technical, sorry.
I come from perhaps a earlier earlier time frame. Maybe I'm a bit older, but so when I was growing up, when you wrote essays in school, for example, if you ever said "I think," you actually got knocked down for it. Like they would mark you down because it's like you never say "I think X" or possibly X because we know that you think it. That's why you're saying it. And so so that I came maybe that's old school, but they always say like just say whatever you're going to say, and we all know that everybody could be wrong. So like, of course you could be wrong. And so, yeah, I guess I just come from an age where that's like assumed that everybody knows that everybody could be wrong about everything. And so, the declarative statements aren't taken to be statements of certainty. It's more you're stating your opinion, you know. But yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's also a new millennium. Maybe I should change with the times, I guess.
It's just I'm coming from a mathematical and logical background, so for me, if I look at these statements, I take them at what they say and
Sure.
not as opinions, but I can see your point.
Thank you for listening. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Please also look at the show notes in order to find a link to our group so that you can join our next discussion. I look forward to chatting with you.